Hello, I'm back. My apologies for those of you who were here and I jumped off for a minute. In all the years I've been doing this, I've never had this happen before. Anyway, here I am. I'm back. Hi, Karen. Nice to see you here. Hopefully you bumped back into our video today. In all the years I've been doing these live videos, I've never had somebody banging on my door as I'm doing it and my dog losing her mind. So had to go give her a treat so that I could come back in when it's quiet. So welcome back. Advanced communication skills with me. So number one, when you are looking at engaging in an up-leveled way with your partner, the first thing to do is to recognize how it is that you are engaging with yourself. Okay. And so what that means and what that looks like is you getting clear on how it is that you listen to yourself, how it is that you talk to yourself throughout the day, what it is that you attend to in your world, and what it is that you're ignoring. Most women who I work with have a long practice of abandoning themselves in their relationship, in their life. And when that happens, what happens is that you will tend to attract someone who's willing to abandon you as well, right? So the number one advanced strategy is to pay attention to how it is that you are communicating with yourself on the regular. Okay, so that means daily. Do you listen to what's going on for you? Are you ignoring some of your basic needs around exercise, sleep, food, friendships? What do you do when you catch a glimpse of yourself in the mirror? So really paying attention to what your love relationship is like with yourself. And I don't mean this, those of you who've been around me for a while know I don't love the word self-care because I think it's become very flippant, like self-care is getting a pedicure. And for me, I think about self-love, resolutely loving yourself on the daily means getting to know who you are, listening to all parts of yourself, which means not exiling the parts that you don't want to see, right? It's really easy to exile the parts of us that are judgmental, the parts of us that we don't like, that are mean, that are addicted to suffering. And the practices that I teach are really about bringing all of you in, which means listening to the part of you that's judgmental, right? The part of you that's maybe judgmental towards your best friend or your neighbor or your mother or your partner, whoever it might be. Like listening to that part of you. What does she have to say? What's up with her? Making room for her without kind of beating her down, saying, well, you shouldn't be judgmental, that's mean. No, actually, there's something for you here, right? That part of you that's judgmental is maybe the part of you that feels alone, that feels like you don't belong, that feels like people aren't paying attention to you, that feels scared that all those people think one thing and I am different. Is this making sense? If you're here live, please feel free to chime in on the comments, post a question if you have one for me. So this first skill, and it is a skill, and is around self-knowledge, right? Is around paying attention to yourself. The path to maturation, long-term maturation, and most people aren't mature in our culture. Most people in our culture are addicted to their adolescence, addicted to their own suffering, aren't even aware of their practices of making themselves a victim in their lives. And self-knowledge, self-inquiry is actually what moves us into a state of wisdom or maturation. Thank you so much, Danny. I appreciate your comment. And so that self-knowledge means getting to know all the parts of you, especially the parts of you that you don't want to look at. Okay. And then I'm going to connect this up to what it has to do with advanced communication with your partner. All right. So notice the different parts. I'm going to be doing a workshop series, a free one, probably next month. And I will post a link to my list. If you're not on my email list, get on it so that you can be invited to this free workshop series where we are going to be really diving in to some of this much more advanced work. I've been teaching certain things for a really long time, and I'm in a moment of a big up level right now. And so you're going to be seeing different content in this space, and would love to share more with you through that series. Number 2, advanced communication practices is noticing how it is and where it is that you struggle in looping conversations with your partner. So if you're having the same argument about finances, if you're having the same argument about intimacy or sex or parenting or co-parenting, I want you to pay attention to what part of you is coming up, right? The part of you, if you're anything like me around things like parenting, when we were actively parenting more, our son's is 20 now, so parenting is very different than it was years ago, but I felt like I was right and my husband was wrong. Like I knew better, that I had a better relationship with our son or whatever the thing was, that I knew more. And the part of me that really wanted to be right, needed to make my husband wrong, the part of me that was unwilling and did not have the skills to step into curiosity and wonder and hold a space for a larger perspective, right? That was one part that would come up during regular conflict with my partner, right? And so the second advanced skill is paying attention to the part of you that comes up when you are activated, otherwise known as triggered, with your partner. Like what's going on for you? Is it the part of you that wasn't ever listened to as a child? Is it the part of you that you feel like you always get put down and she like needs to come out a swinging, right? The part of you that feels like somebody's always making you wrong, that you feel invisible. Really important to recognize what part that is, because if you don't know what part that is that's coming out, what happens is that part is driving the bus in your communication. And usually that part is a part of us from childhood that didn't feel seen, validated, loved enough. It was muted, quieted, whatever was happening. And so if we're unwilling to see it, to be in relationship with it, it is going to come out and it's going to assert itself in that conflictual dynamic with our partner. It's going to assert itself. So now you have this undeveloped part of you, this immature part of you that is driving the bus of your life. And that's a problem, right? That's no good. We don't want that. What we want is for you to have the ability and the skills to see that part of you that's coming up from your younger time in your life, right? It's coming up here. I want you to be able to recognize that part and get into relationship with it. Ask it what it needs. Give it what it needs. Because then what happens is the grown-up part of you, the part of you that's alive and well today, that part of you can interface and actually start driving the bus of your relationship again, rather than the unhealed part of you. Does that make sense? if we don't do some, and I don't love the word healing, but if we don't get into relationship with that part of ourselves, then that part, that adolescent part, that FU part, that part that's like, ugh, they never listen, that part is the one that's driving your life. That's a problem. I mean, that's a problem if you want to have, deep connection, intimacy, if you want to live an accountable life of substance. Because what is happening is those underground parts that you haven't recognized and become into relationship with they're going to pop up like this, like whack-a-mole, right? And they're going to make decisions in your life. And those parts aren't fully mature. And it's our great get to, as far as I'm concerned, to get to know those parts and to do that reclamation work. So Karen, good, you're back. Karen said, bingo, same conversations that go nowhere due to my feelings of lack. Now I'm aware of it, but it still drives the bus more than I want. Yeah, so raise your hand if you're with Karen, right? You recognize it, and so then slow it way down, right? That narrative of lack or of scarcity, right? That not enoughness is a real endemic in our world. Most people live in a state of not enough. So if I have that narrative of not enough, and it might be not enough love, not enough money, not enough sex, not enough attention, not enough home, not enough clients, not whatever it gets tangled up around, it is 100% my job to grow up that part of me. That word doesn't even work because it's a maturation process, but it's recognizing that I don't want to live by that belief system anymore, right? And the only person who gets to do that is you. And the longer I look outside of myself, which is the beautiful gift of relationship, most of us won't know that we're walking around with this lack until we get into intimate partnership, where we get to project all of that onto our partner, right? We get to, and it is a big get to, because otherwise you don't get to do that maturation work. Most people, the average person, the person that's not in this space, because all of you are exceptional and different. And if you have women friends who you feel like would benefit from this kind of conversation, please invite them into this space. I'd love to have them here. All of you recognize and are willing to see that you're projecting it's called your shadow, onto your partner. And that's the only way that you can see it and do something about it. Because if I don't see it out here, I don't know it exists, because I think I'm sort of amazing, right? Like, I'm good. Everything about me is good. But then I get into a relationship and not so good, but it's hard for me to see that. So instead I look outside. Danny says this may be a silly question. There are no silly questions. But what if you see your partner doing the not enough stuff? Yeah. Is it something like when you work on the inner work, then he isn't able to project as much onto me and he would have more space? Yeah, great question. So if your partner's the one doing the lack dance, right? Which again, they're human. Most of us are in some sort of not enoughness. So firstly, to recognize that's kind of the name of the game. It's not awesome, but it's how it goes. And knowing that he's in his path, if you've maybe not heard me use this analogy, I'll use it again. It's like we're on this huge game board of life, and each of us are a different colored token. So I'm a green token, Danny, you're a red token, Karen's a yellow token, Danny, your husband is a purple token. So we're all different colored tokens, and we're going around the game board of life in our green, yellow, purple, red tokeny way. That's how we're doing life. That's how we're seeing life. That's how we're engaging in life. That's how we are co-creating with life, is through that lens. And the easiest thing to do if I'm in a relationship with somebody and I see their lack story is to want to change it, because I'm like, oh, you don't have to live that way. You could live a different way. Why don't you stop experiencing lack, right? Why don't you do it different? which I understand because you probably don't want your partner to be in suffering, right? So that makes a lot of sense. However, the problem with that is that your partner is doing sort of the game of life in their particular way. And unless they signed up for the Danny self-help personal growth program, they're probably not going to take that feedback very well. So instead, we get to recognize my partner, my child, my parent is in their own co-creation with life, and it's not my business to teach them. I can be supportive. I can collaborate in certain ways, and I certainly talk to the women who I mentor about how to do that. But the best thing I can do is look at where it is that maybe my inner critic is coming out and I'm criticizing my partner. That it's this interesting thing that our ego can do. It's like, well, I feel like I'm enough. They don't feel like they're enough. What's wrong with them? So now I'm judgmental. Maybe I feel like there's enough, but now my judgmental part is coming, that I think they need to be where I'm at. Does that make sense? So it's a super slippery little dance that we do. And it's why it is that being in marriage or a committed relationship or having a child and co-parenting with somebody is so amazing, because all of this is going to come up for you. All of it will. And it's all yours. It's all yours. And that doesn't mean that you don't get to have boundaries or standards. Actually, boundaries and standards are foundational. But many of us have some, cleanup work to do because we haven't had boundaries and standards. And then we get to a place where we're just like so finished with it that we come out guns blazing. So that's not good either, right? Well, I mean, it's not good or bad. It's just creates challenge. So the two pieces that I want, or I suggest that you play with, are really noticing the kind of relationship that you have with yourself, noticing how it is that you communicate with yourself. And the second is pay attention to the part of you that is interfacing in that conflictual or difficult conversation with your partner, and get to know that part of you. Danny says, this was such a beautiful answer. Thank you for speaking to the heart of my question. Oh, thank you so much, Danny. I really appreciate it. Anyone else who's here, whether you're here live or on replay, please post your question or comments. I'm going to wrap up here in just a moment. If you are on replay, I do go back and read all of the comments and questions. Happy to field those questions here. This is really an up-leveled space for women, where you're recognizing that the answer to your problem is not a worksheet or a scripted back and forth thing. Those exercises can be useful, but really here, what we're doing is we're engaging in much more depth-oriented practices where you are brave and willing and courageous enough to look at how it is that you have co-created a relationship with your partner that likely brings you some level of suffering. And if it brings you some level of suffering, that means that there's a part of you that is getting something from that suffering. It sounds crazy, but it's true. And we keep doing those old patterns until we are thoroughly ready to set them down. And I can't hurry you up on that process. You have to be ready to say, oh, I don't any longer need to learn through this kind of suffering. I believe that we can grow with a lot of elegance and ease and simplicity and community and laughter and joy. And most of us are going to feel some pain and suffering and discomfort and grief and sadness along the way. And that's okay. But my practice is to be so aware of how it is that I am conditioning myself to old patterns of being a victim or old patterns of feeling not enough, to become really aware of those so that I can come into relationship with them and they don't have to be running my life anymore. Because when those parts of you run your life, your life can feel out of control. You can feel lost. You can feel like, I don't know what to do. You can have all the information, but you don't know how. So I want to give you some really practicals on the how. Okay, so Shannon is saying, what am I getting from suffering? What do I need to set down? I no longer need to learn through this kind of suffering, old patterns of. So good, this resonates. Oh, I'm so glad. So glad. Yeah. What are you getting from suffering? It's an uncomfortable question to ask ourselves. And often, for many of us, the answer is familiarity, right? Or this sounds crazy, I know, and women don't like it when I bring up the word victim, but get ready because I'm going to be talking about victim all darn year long. So it's going to be happening. The truth is that our addiction to our own suffering keeps us in a victim position in our relationships, in our work, in our relationships with wealth, our relationships with family, the world, culture, community, politics, the list goes on and on. And we don't need to be in those relationships with suffering any longer. And I say that knowing that there is suffering that we experience, right? Through losing someone who we love, or, normal life creates pain. I don't need to create additional suffering by choosing a system in a relationship that, and I don't love the word toxic, because I'm showing up in adolescent ways, in irresponsible ways, in blaming ways, in non-accountable ways. And that's what toxicity is, right? I don't love this term, like that you have a toxic partner, because we have choice, right? So that's getting off on another tangent. I'll wrap up here. Thank you so much, those of you, for being here. I so appreciate it. Danny, thank you for your comments. Danny says, love that there's an up-leveled, fun, elegant community, shared way of learning rather than patterns of misery. Yeah, absolutely. I just want to say hats off to the women in this Facebook group, because you all really do an amazing job of not coming in here and doing the dumping of problem thing. You ask up-level questions, you hold yourself with personal self-respect, which we can do while we are also in the difficulties of relationship. And a lot of spaces, especially on Facebook, are spaces where, especially with relationships, where it's all about, here's what my, jerk off partner did. And it's a lot of that blaming stuff. And that's not what we do here. As you can see, if you've been in here for a while, it's really about raising the bar for us, not about perfection, but it is about showing up as our higher selves. So thank you. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. I will put a link to my email if you want to be on that list. I will be sending out information about a free 5-day workshop series that I'll be doing next month. So if you get on my list, you'll be one of the first to get an invite. Thanks so much. Have a great day. See you soon.